Good evening. Here we go once again. Thank you all for tuning in to the Leo and Larry show. I'm Leo Woodbury. As we know, my co-host Larry Smith has gone on to be with our creator, but we still acknowledge him and pay tribute to all the great work he's done as a journalist and also as my co-host. We miss him, but his spirit still lives. And as usual, we're glad to have you come into the Leo and Larry show, the place that shows you where you can go and helps you to learn the things that you need to know. We have a guest. We always have great guests, and he is a great guest. And today's guest is Dr. Thomas Rashad Easley. He is the former dean for community and inclusion at Yale University. He's also a performer. He's a writer. He's a trainer. He's a consultant. He just does so many things. I can't even list them all. So we're just going to go ahead and move right ahead and let him tell you about himself and his journey. And hey, I call him Rashad, and that's how he likes to be known as. So, Dr. Thomas Rashad Easley. Rashad, thank you for coming on to the Leo and Larry show.
Oh, of course, Reverend Leo, thank you for having me here, sir. It is always a pleasure to be in your presence, and that's whether it's in person or online. I prefer in person, but and then to be on your platform, or on the platform that you also share with your brothers, also elevate his spirit. And thank you for allowing me to be here, sir.
You're welcome. And your journey has been an amazing one. I first met you, and it's like, wow, you do so many things, but just so down to earth and humbled and grounded. And, we have a lot of young people and people from the community who often feel like they're limited what they can do or the things they can't do. And one of the things that I acknowledge and respect you for is because of the many, many things you have done and continue to do, and
So,
including being the first African American dean at Yale,
yes, sir.
for community and inclusion. I mean, that was groundbreaking, historical. So why don't
Yes,
you
sir.
tell people about yourself, your past, where
Sure.
you were born, and just take us through your journey.
Thank you for that, Rev. Well, I want to start by acknowledging both my mother and my father in particular, because a lot of everything that I do is really centers from them. They both are civil rights activists. I'm fortunate that I still have them among the living, as they continue to work and be healthy. But it all really stems from them. And then the other two people that it really stems from are my maternal grandparents, being my mother's mother and father, who I was raised with both of them, fortunately. Now, the reason why I start with them is because my grandparents trained or taught me how to garden. So it was because of them that I was outside. And my mother and father, they're more the modern parents, right? So they brought me up like that. They sent me to a private school. So fortunately, I had what some would probably consider the old school way of living. I had grandparents who weren't actually removed from far removed from slavery, because they're great, because their grandparents, would have been were a part of the transatlantic slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a grandfather who is black, but also, and I don't say this all the time, but I just want to say this because I've learned this about him, who actually is indigenous American. He's not just black. He's actually, what someone called Native American, but I'm going to say indigenous. And then, and so coming up with them, gardening, learning to be outside, going to private schools, my parents helped expose me to education early. So I was reading on an eighth grade level by the time I was in the fourth grade. So by the time I was 9, I was already doing what I should have been doing at 13 or 14 years old. And but here's the thing: going to an environment, they sent me to a Christian school. So hey, it's good to talk to Rev. Rev also know that I'm an ordained minister.
Yes.
But at this school, Rev, they taught us basically about Jesus in a racial way. It's like Jesus was his blood was red, everything good was white as snow, everything evil or satanic was black. And I don't know, some may say that they maybe didn't do that on purpose, but there's a part of me that feels like there's some intention there to make people of a certain color feel less than and people of another color to feel more than. So
Hmm.
I came up in the school where I thought I was evil and bad because my skin, even though I'm brown and not black, if you will, reflected this evil color. So when I started acting a little different, thinking I was special, my parents pulled me from that school and basically put me back in a black school. And I'm so glad that they did that because that is what allowed me to get back grounded in my community with my people. And that's when I started learning about my mom being a civil rights activist, her brother being the first field lieutenant brought into the movement by Dr. King, which is his name is Reverend Dr. James Orange. People, you can go look him up. He died in
Oh, yeah.
2008. But
Mhm.
yeah, but Reverend, see, you probably know him, but James Orange, that's my uncle. He was
Oh,
yeah, he was one of the main people with King. When you think of Andrew Young, David Abernathy, you have to put my uncle there because my uncle was among those people who were with him
wow.
everywhere he went. So as I started learning that history, I'm like, wait a minute, you mean my family was actually pivotal in the civil rights movement? A lot of the I'm going to say spirituals that we seen like ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. My uncle was like the people who were writing those songs that we were singing that y'all was singing in the civil rights movement. My uncle
Hmm.
was writing those. My uncle is the son of my grandfather who was a singer. He was in the gospel quartet. My grandmother is a pianist. So when you add up all of that, and then you mention that I'm an artist, it makes sense that now I have a record label where I play the trombone and I'm an MC who works with other musicians around the country.
Oh, more
Okay.
than just that. Let me put it so folks know that you do hip hop. I mean, you've
Particular.
done the openings for artists like David Banner and
Yeah.
Ludacris
Big
and
credit.
right.
Yes, sir. Exactly. So I've
Yeah.
been on the stage with these major superstars, and it's an honor for me to be on there with them. But I'll try to keep it quick because I want to honor the time. If you fast forward from the civil rights activist and being a garden and being in gardening, I'm also an Eagle Scout. So I finished my Eagle Scout technically early. I finished. Most people finish an Eagle Scout after high school or 17. I finished mine between the age of 15 and 16. And my Eagle Scout project had to do with bioremediation in what is known as our Sloss Furnace in Birmingham, which is a place where they built weapons for World War II. And
Hmm.
that was the place that made Birmingham known as the Pittsburgh of the South. So fast forward from there, you get a young man who goes to college, and I end up majoring in forestry. And I'm glad. I'm always going to yell. I'm a Bulldog first, Alabama A&M, HBCU, William Hooper Council. I founded 1875 in Normal, Alabama. Some would say Huntsville, Alabama. So I went there for my education, and I had a scholarship with the Forest Service. All of these are always because I'm talking to you, Rev. You understand when I say these are all blessings.
Oh
From
yeah.
there, I get to work with the Forest Service to pay them back the time of them investing in me. So, I'm on a scholarship that actually grants me a job. And I'm going to keep it positive. But while working for them, I recognize that what I really want to do is I want to work in genetics because that's how I got interested in forestry. I was doing a tree genetic project in the Summer Institute at Alabama A&M, and I did great. And the Forest Service gave me a scholarship because I presented the work well. Well, after doing that work, and I'm like, now that I've done this work in forestry, I want to go back to grad school because I know that to have a master's degree or other degrees would give me more opportunity. So I go back to grad school and I go to Iowa State. So now I'm in cyclone land. Keep in mind, this is after working with the Forest Service in Bozeman and Red Lodge, Montana. So I go from Birmingham, Alabama to Normal, Alabama to Montana, okay, back down to Iowa.
Hmm.
And so now and here again, like basically after I leave Alabama, I'm basically among nothing but white people, if you will, because I'm in forestry. And there's another thing that I left out. While I was at Alabama A&M, I was an exchange student at the University of Georgia. So I
Hmm.
go to UGA, which is a top forestry school, and I do well. Thank goodness for UGA. They're the Bulldogs. I graduate from Alabama A&M, who gave me my shot. Okay, they're the Bulldogs. And of course, as you mentioned, I was the first African American who was a dean of community and inclusion in the School of the Environment at Yale University, who were also the Bulldogs. So I'm a Bulldog 3 times. I'm a Bulldog 3 times. So, so from Iowa State, I do work in genetics. Dr. Richard Hall was my major professor. He's now an ancestor. He's passed on to glory. May he rest in peace. And another committee member, Dr. Sandy McNabb, may he also rest in peace. Those men really invested in me at Iowa State. And while I was there, Dr. George Jackson gave me an opportunity to work in a program called the Ronald E. McNair Post Baccalaureate Program.
Wow.
Dr. McNair went to North Carolina A&T, and he was on the rocket in the 80s that unfortunately blew up when they were, I think it was the Explorer, but I may have that wrong. But he
Yeah.
passed away in that explosion. So I get to work in this program called McNair to help undergrad students graduate from Iowa State and go to grad school. And what happened was the majority of my students were all ESL, English second language. My students all spoke Spanish. But at the end of my first year of being a McNair counselor, I was probably the only counselor who all of my students were all going to grad school. That's a
Mm.
big deal when you're a Black man from the South who does not speak Spanish, but who has all Spanish speaking students, and you help them so much that they graduate from Iowa State and go on to grad school. So that's when my love for working with people came alive. And from there, I did work for a year back in Birmingham. I worked in urban forestry. That's where I got certified in doing remote sensing. So now you got a geneticist who's a forester who's also working in remote sensing. From there, I end up at NC State, and that's when my journey in diversity starts. And so I'm the first diversity director at NC State, period. Period. The first diversity director at State in 2004. And I'm also the first diversity director that the College of Natural Resources at NC State has ever had. And that is where I learn about diversity. That is where I learn about
Mm.
equity and inclusion. That's where I start teaching classes. That's where I also get my doctorate. That's where I started going around the world talking about forestry, going all around the country, recruiting people into forestry. Now, this is what, for real, I'm going to say this and wrap this up in 2 minutes. It was from NC State, I ended up going to Yale. While at NC State, I started a business and became a public speaker and started writing my first book and started my music label. By the time I get to Yale and I'm a dean, when you get to Yale, it's like blowing up. You get there, everybody kind of sees you. So now the world knows who I am because Yale is global and everybody knows about Yale probably before they know about Jay-Z, because that's just how long they've been around, 300 years. And while at Yale in 2 years' time, working under Dean Indy Burke, I got nothing but love for her. We were able to do what I did at NC State in 2 years, but what took me at NC State to do, which took 8 years. And this is what we did. We increased the number of students of color from all around the country, not just internationally, but around the country. We in particular brought in more Black and brown students. I was the first person of color who was an official administrator on the dean level in the school. By the time I left, we had 6. I was
Mm.
when I came in there, it was like less than 9% of Black and brown, including indigenous students. When I left, we had over 30%. Also, when I came in, we had no faculty of color in the School of Forestry, none. By the time I left, we had 6. 2 of them were tenured, which means that they can't be fired, and 2 of them were already a level before getting tenure. So basically, I came in, and when people talk about diversity, my thing is diversity is about changing what an organization looks like. But remember when I said 2 of those professors were tenured. One of those people, and I'm gonna give the name, Professor Dorceta Taylor. She is known for in environmental justice, and she is known in this space. She's a beautiful person, a brilliant professional. She technically was a mentor to me, but I'm fortunate that I can say she became my successor because she is now the associate dean working that job with 2 people working under her, and they're really doing a lot of stuff. Whereas when I was working there before, my associate Yolanda Quinones came and I was doing it by myself. When I was at NC State before Dr. Shafney Graves and Celeste Ritchie and a couple of other people came to work with me, I was doing this work by myself. So the whole point is, because I'm a forester and I worked in Montana, I think that informed me how to do diversity work. But because I'm from Alabama and I'm a person that's in the civil rights family, that also taught me how to be entrenched in reality. And because I'm proud of my identity, no one can tell me that I don't know how to work with my people, and no one can tell me, how to love and care for my people. And that is the energy that I bring to diversity work and forestry. And that's somewhat in a nutshell how I got here.
Wow, As I said, family, he has done a lot and is continuing to do a lot. And so you're a speaker, you do diversity and inclusion training, right? Consulting.
Mhm.
Why don't you
Consulting.
talk about some of that? Because that is desperately needed. But fortunately,
Mhm.
more and more colleges, universities, and businesses, I'm talking about corporations, on down, are starting to realize the importance of diversity and inclusion because America is becoming more diverse, right? So talk about some of that, please.
Yes, yes, sir. Well, so as Rev Leo said, I am a diversity, equity, and inclusion professional. But if you notice when I told my story, I always reference, excuse me, forestry first. And you know what? I apologize, Rev. I didn't mention something. I also came up from in a family that was entrenched in church. My family chartered churches in Birmingham. I come from a family of ministers and deacons, which is why I'm an ordained minister as well as an ordained deacon too. So I grew up, I grew up with that. This is bringing it back to diversity. Reason why I wanted to take y'all down that brief, what's the word, tangent is because while I am a DEI professional, I don't think that I would be a good DEI professional if I wasn't a forester. I don't think
Mhm.
I would be a good DEI professional if I wasn't a teacher, if I didn't have certifications and degrees in education, and if I hadn't have done work in community. I mean, I've been and I still am a community activist. I still work with youth. I still work with elders. I still work with churches. So I'm bringing all of that up to say that when I do my DEI work, that's a lot of what I use in the space. Now, why did I become a consultant like this on my own as far as in DEI? I will say this isn't about shaming anybody. I have worked with nothing but beautiful, brilliant people in this DEI space. I have been taught by people like Kathleen Castagna, who originated the opening doors model. I really would love for people to go and check it out. She is brilliant, and her team, whether
Mhm.
we're talking about Betty, Eduardo, and it's a few other people that not come to my mind right now. I apologize because I know that they're going to hear this because I'm going to share this with them. But
Mhm.
that is a phenomenal team. I learned a lot of what I do in diversity from them. Then there are also people like Dr. Alan Kennedy and Beverly Jones Williams who are at NC State who did the National Coalition for Building Institute. They really poured into me and helped me to learn about DEI. And there's one other person that I want to mention before I go into what I do. And his name is Mickey Fern. Milton Lewis Fern is his real name, but Mickey Fern is what he's known as. Mickey was a deputy chief for the Park Service, an Obama appointee, and I've learned a lot with him. Okay, back to Yale. What I do in my firm called My Heart for Diversity, which is also the same name of my first book. I say first because I'm finished book two and I'm working on three now. Is I do what I did when I worked in academia for the Forest Service. Now go back to the first thing I said. I wouldn't be a good DEI professional if I wasn't a forester, if I wasn't an educator. What I feel is what we have now in DEI, and I am calling out. I'm kind of pulling the Cat Williams right now. We just did in the comedy world. I'm calling out some DEI people, but without going off on us. I feel that what's happened is a lot of us in DEI have gotten pigeonholed in diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is what I mean. A lot of us go and learn about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think we learn about it in a way of justifying ourselves. Like, look, I'm dealing with these injustices in the space and we need to fix this. And so a lot of us go and either get certified or learn some models about how to talk about diversity. But unfortunately, I don't think a lot of us have the experience of actually implementing diversity initiatives to change an organization. That's why I said what I said about what I did at Yale. See, if I hadn't did what I did at Yale, if I hadn't have changed
Mhm.
how it looked, if I hadn't have brought in people and also somewhat shifted how we worked, I don't think I'd be able to run my own firm right now. If I hadn't have been at NC State, and I want to say this, Dean Myron Floyd is the dean at NC State. He was the first African American faculty member I helped to get hired in 2005 at NC State.
Mhm.
I'm bringing that up to say I helped get him hired. Fast forward 15 years later, he's now the dean of that school. So, in my opinion, what's going on at NC State and the College of Natural Resources is still a part of my legacy because he wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for what I did with them when I came there in 2004. So, what I'm saying is that, so now, again, what am I saying? In my firm, I help organizations hire and retain diverse talent. I help organizations change and shift the culture of how they operate and also what they do, especially if they need to change what success looks like, or if they need to shift the direction of what they do. And I also help organizations do this work. So when myself and my firm leave, and my associate partner in my firm is Keisha King, love working with her. She's based in Colorado. When we leave them, they can do this work on their own. That's the whole point, because when
Hey,
I left Yale, they could
mm,
do it on their own. When I left NC State, a lot of what I was doing, they could do on their own. What I don't ever want in the organization to be is dependent on me. Now, don't get me wrong, I like making money. I love it. And I love being able to pay other people. But what I don't like is to be in a position where I'm helping other humans be better humans, when all they need to do is think for themselves, slow down, be thoughtful, and be willing to assess every single thing that they do. That's why I go back and say, if I wasn't a forester who did this
mm,
work, I couldn't do this work in diversity. If I wasn't a minister who worked in the church and grew a church and helped and learned how to work with people, I can't be a DEI professional. And if I was not an educator, I couldn't be that. So I just wanted to say that that's what I do. And to close out this question, I want to say, here's how I came to that realization. When I was at Yale, when I was at NC State, when I first came there, I didn't understand diversity, Rev. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't. And I would never tell you that I get DEI, because there's always something to learn. I brought in a lot of professionals. And remember when I mentioned opening doors, I brought in people who taught me, who helped me to implement and to initiate things. But they also did something that no DEI professional can tell anybody how to do. Nobody can tell, I can't tell Reverend Leo how to be Reverend Leo. Only Reverend Leo can tell me how to be Reverend Leo. What I realized is nobody could tell me how to be Thomas. They could only tell me how they understood diversity. By the time I got to Yale and I'm bringing in consultants, this is what happened at Yale. I was bringing in brilliant people, but this is how it was different. I'm bringing them in to help me, but in some ways, I'm telling them how to do what I hired them to do. That's when I knew something was different. I'm like, wait a minute. If I'm paying somebody $10,000, $30,000 to do something, yet in a way I'm doing the job for them, I think I'm in a different position now.
mm,
And that's where my confidence to do this work on my own started. And that's not to say that those professionals weren't great who I worked with, because they were. That's not to say that they didn't know what they were doing. It wasn't that. But what I recognize is the challenges that I had. Remember, to change an organization, make it look different, make it operate different. What I realized is the people that I was bringing in to help me, they had never done that before. And
mm,
that's when my confidence grew to say, I can do this on my own as far as a consultant, because I have done this. It wasn't easy. It was hard. It was so hard, Riv, that by the time I left NC State, I had developed for real PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So I know what it's like to hold pain in your body and get sick and have to sit out of work. I know what it's like to work with people who you think want to work with you, and then you come to find out later that they don't. And I also know what it's like to work with people that you don't think want to work with you, and you come to find out that they do, which means you got to be humble and grow. And so that means that when I come into organizations, I don't just help do DEI work. I work with the CEOs, I work with people of the different units, I work with professionals so that they don't burn out. I also help you recruit and retain talent. So
mm,
and I create curricula and help you to and teach it to you so that you can lead it on your own once I'm gone. So that's just
right.
in essence, in a nutshell, some of what I do.
Mm. Awesome. And I know you've done it with large corporations and other types of entity. You keep
Mhm.
mentioning forestry.
Yes, sir.
And so a lot of people might not really understand what a forester does, is one, if you could explain that. And then two, how much we depend on forests. We have people who live, we don't always, and I'm talking about folks who live in the country, we don't always we call them the woods rather than forests.
Mhm.
Most of the time, don't go in those woods. No, you're going into the forest. But explain the benefits, how important forests are for the environment, for diversity, biodiversity. Um, just that if we don't have our forests in their natural state and know how to manage them properly, that it literally can mean the difference between life and death, not only for the species in the forest, but for the human species as well. So if you can go into that some, I think that, we have some of our listeners may not be familiar with what the term forestry or forester or the importance of forests are.
Yes, sir. No, that's a great question. Thank you. So
Mhm.
forestry to me is central to so much of what we do in I'm going to say in like say in the world. Now, let me explain what I mean in the world. Like if you have a house, if you live in a house and your house is built from wood, more than likely, if your grandfather, mother, or father then built it, foresters helped to harvest that wood that is being used that was used to build your house. If you enjoy drinking coffee, okay, what most people don't realize is coffee actually is a tree. So in order for you to get, excuse me, to get the coffee beans that you have, somebody has to harvest that and get that to you. More than likely, that could have been somebody in a field doing that, but foresters also are the ones who probably make it so that you have access to it. And then one other thing, let's say toothpaste. Let's say toothpaste. If you like using toothpaste, which I hope people do, ooh, no, let's bring it home. If you like using toilet paper, which I hope people do,
Yes, we
okay,
all.
we all do, right? But how do you get that toilet paper? How do you get the paper that we write on? 9 times out of 10, it's actually coming from a forester or a person who's a logger who goes out and harvests that wood, who sends it to a company that then curates that wood and prepares it to then break it down to to where they can turn it into paper. All right. So right there, anyone who uses paper, pencil, lives in a home, uses a desk, do anything, you really have no idea, if you never heard of forestry, how dependent you are on forestry. So right there, everybody really in the world is dependent on this on this industry, whether they know it or not, because it provides the essence really of what you do, whether you live in a house, whether you do work. When I started learning about forestry and I started really understanding how pivotal this industry was, of course, I was interested in why is it that more people who look like me or not in this industry. And that's another podcast, real, because I don't want to take people through all of that just now. But it's the same issue that you've graciously continue promote yourself, which is when you're trying to encourage companies to be more diverse and to also encourage these organizations to look out for communities so that they don't harm them when they're building factories or so that or if they're harvesting trees. Forestry is so big a part of what we do that the majority of population in this country don't even know that it exists. That's how you, and I'm gonna go ahead and tell people, here's what's funny. That's how you know something is probably or is more likely existential to what you do, is that you don't know about it. And so because you don't know about it doesn't mean that it's not there, that it's not helpful. It just means that you don't know. So when I got into forestry and started working in Montana, I noticed that I was the only black guy in the county doing the work that I was doing. But what I also noticed is that when I went and spoke to indigenous communities or, or like natives, or like native tribes, I started learning that they also understand how to cultivate and utilize the forest. So in essence, if someone says, what's a forester? A forester is an individual, is a professional who basically cultivates the forest to make products as well as to manage the forest so that we will have more forests and products in the future and so that we will have more habitat for wildlife. Okay. And wildlife could be anything from deer, rabbits, squirrels, chipmunks, bears, mountain lions, bison, um, shoot, all the way from that all the way down to a fox, a red wolf, or a werewolf, or a cow. You see, all because we humans are the only ones who depend on the outdoors. Every animal that you never see in an urban setting is fully dependent on the outdoors, including a dog and a cat and a
Mhm.
bird. And what's so fascinating is if you watch a dog, cat, or a bird in particular, you'll notice that they know how to exist in these natural settings. You throw a dog in water, what is a dog gonna start doing? Swimming.
Swimming.
They're gonna start dog pedaling. That
Mhm.
dog has instinct and they know how to do it. If a squirrel sees certain kind of food, they're gonna run to it and pick through it and eat it. If a bird sees something, they're gonna eat that. Here's the reason why forestry is so important though. Because if we don't have the trees, then in our settings, I'm saying settings because a forest, because our planet is nothing but a forest. That's all it is. We call forest where we see trees. No, a forest is what we live on because this country that we live in looked a certain way 200 years ago. 200 years
Mhm.
ago, this country looked like nothing but major forest as it continued to be harvested and changed over time. So we live in a forest. If we don't have trees on our land, soil cannot stabilize, which means that there'll be more flooding. If we don't have trees in our neighborhoods, that means that when it's summertime, you live in South Carolina, I'm in North Carolina. We both know that when that sun hit us, it's like the temperature of hell. It's just we burn it. If there are more
Mhm.
trees here, the thermal heat will not be as high. And it's been proven now that there are communities, in particular Black and brown communities, that have a higher heat index than white communities because
Mhm.
they don't have any trees there. All they have are buildings. All you have is parking lots. All you have are project buildings and grocery stores and
Mhm.
and corner stores and corner lots. So a forester
It's
helps.
15 degrees hotter in those communities than
Mhm,
communities that have tree cover.
there you go. So a forester helps you to understand, in my opinion, a good forester, what trees can grow there. And I don't mean, oh, I want to grow eucalyptus in Raleigh, North Carolina, so that I can make products from eucalyptus. See, I'm gonna tell you something. To me, that's not a good forester. That's an opportunist. Because what you're doing is you're bringing a tree here that does not naturally grow here to grow a product so that you can sell it. See, and in my opinion, that's kind of where the industry of forestry and the environment has gotten something wrong. And we've been doing that for a long time where we harvest, like we go into a forest and we pull trees out, then we turn around and plant trees back in rows. And then we
Mhm.
say, because we're replanting, we say we're helping the environment. But if you're replanting trees that don't naturally grow there, you are stripping that land, you're harming that soil, which also means that you're probably making it so that wildlife that are there got to go and find the native food that they would eat somewhere else. And here's what's fascinating. If you go back in I think it was the 90s, there was a time when there was a big fire in the 90s in the Bay Area of California. And there were like 5,000 homes that got lost. The reason why those homes got lost, a forest fire breaks out. They had eucalyptus trees planted there because they cut down a lot of the redwoods. The oil in
Mhm.
the eucalyptus trees caught on fire. Those trees started exploding. 5,000 homes got lost.
Mhm.
This is the reason why the forest industry needs to be in concert with community. It's not enough to say, oh, yeah, we replant trees after we harvest. That's not enough. We need to stop harvesting trees, stop harvesting as much. And we need to start, just like we recycle, let's say we need to recycle plastic, we need to recycle the wood that we've already harvested and try to be smarter with it because we're not getting any more land. We're not getting any more water. Now, that's going further than what you asked me. But I just want to ask, did I answer your question about the forestry part?
Oh
Because I kind
yeah,
of feel like I'm going
and,
somewhere
and
else.
and and the dependency that we have because when you clear cut and
Mhm.
remove trees, there
Mhm.
are species that depend on those trees. There are animals that eat certain insects,
Mhm.
and those insects are important. But if you get too many mosquitoes, etc., and then those birds are also, they also help pollinate and do things, and everything is connected. Everything in nature depends on each other. And when you clear cut something, and for the audience, while you're driving through South Carolina, be observant sometime. And what you'll see is you'll look, and just as Dr. Rashad said, you'll look and you'll see pine trees that are planted in rows, just like you would a garden. You won't see any other different type of tree. You won't see bushes. You won't see vines. And that's not natural. And so what happens, that's one of the reasons why we see deer and raccoons in places where they shouldn't be in cities and urban settings, is
Mhm.
because we have removed their home. Well,
You said
by
it.
yes. Mhm.
We've and so and thank you for saying that, Rick. You see, because we have removed their home, and where do we go? And I think that and because I'm speaking to a reverend, I've been to his church. Everyone who's listening, a powerful following. He understands our connection to God and to each other. I think that some of us have kind of taken religion at the same time, Rev, and also abused that and misused that. Like when we talk about in Genesis, how we're supposed to have dominion over the earth. I think that some of us have abused that, thinking that dominion means control.
Mm,
Dominion actually means that you're in concert with what's going on the planet. You're not over it because you're a part of it. And so the same way that the animals, understand their role, we as human beings need to understand ours. And I think that our role is to steward the land, not to control the land. And the
mm,
problem is that I think a lot of what the country would say forefathers, because I can't put my forefathers in there because my forefathers didn't own any big time industries. But the forefathers who built this country, I think, have abused, they abused the resources just like they also abused people. And when you fast forward from 1776 on up to now, you look at what we're doing. In essence, the same way we have a New England, I think that we also have a new revolution where people, like where even though we think we're doing good things, we really need to wake up and realize that how we got here, we cannot continue on this frequency and have the same planet Earth that we have enjoyed. But I'll say this too, as I'm saying that, and it's not me trying to make people feel horrible or feel bad because I'm not claiming that I'm not guilty in that too. But I just want to say this. If you're a human being and you're 70 years old and you don't know, and oh, let me say it like this, and you live in the South. I mean, you live in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, Tennessee, Mississippi, I'm gonna say Texas, and if you don't know what a squirrel sounds like when they're screaming,
mm,
you don't realize how disconnected from the land you really are.
mm,
If you don't know what a squirrel sounds like, I didn't say a chipmunk. I said a
mm.
squirrel. Squirrels are in every major city, in every urban setting. I'm not going to scare people by doing the noise, but what I'm saying is that that's how disconnected from the land we are
Mm.
as a human species, that we don't even know what the animals sound like. I'll say this and if real, I'll pause again. If you don't know, I'm talking about a human body, it's like if people don't know when and when not to eat, like I don't need to eat right now. I'm not hungry. I ate an hour ago.
Mm.
That's a sign of how disconnected we are from our bodies. So what I'm saying is that if we're disconnected from our bodies, it makes sense that we're disconnected from the land. If we're disconnected from the land, we're disconnected from each other. And if we're disconnected from each other, then that means we're actually disconnected from all the like wildlife and everything going on the planet. And what we need to do as a human population is we do need to come together more. We need to listen to each other more. We need to help each other more. But I also think that we need to humble ourselves more and learn, and just really start to look. It's almost like be quiet and start paying attention to the impact that we're having on this land because trees are our relatives. If we don't have the trees, we can't breathe. If we don't have land, we have nowhere to stay. If we
Mm.
don't have if we don't have fish, we ain't gonna have food after a while because these wildlife that we're trying to protect and keep land for, that's what they eat.
That's right.
You know what I'm
And
saying? And
yeah,
go
let me
ahead.
say
Yes, sir.
another way because it's like this too. People need to realize, don't kill a bee. You don't want to kill a
Mm,
honeybee,
no.
butterflies,
Mm-mm.
hummingbirds.
Mm-mm.
They actually pollinate our food. If
Yes.
all of the bees disappeared on this planet, we would starve to death. We
Mm.
wouldn't have enough food to eat. So
Facts. Facts.
everything is connected, and we have to realize what you said from Genesis, that when God set us over nature, said to have the dominion over the earth and subdue it,
Hmm.
that's before the fall. That's before there's sin and evil and greed and all of this in the world. So
Hmm.
we need to realize that we are not apart from nature. We are a part of nature. And that we have to, just like we need to get along and work together with each other, we have to
Hmm.
do that with the planet and with
Absolutely.
nature and everything. I'm sorry, I just that's an example I like to give to people because a lot of people they want to kill the bees and the mosquitoes and they don't understand that helps us. That even a mosquito helps you to survive.
Yes, it does. I tell people, I
Yeah.
I think that what we, I kind of say it like this. I say the way we treat the land is how we actually treat people, whether we
Mm,
know it or not. And if we like I'm working more to eat off of the land. Like me and my family, like we have a garden now. We're doing better to eat off the land. I'm not saying we're perfect because we're not. And we're also doing better to kind of eat in season too. So like if apples are not growing, then we don't eat it. You see,
mm,
if the blueberries are not growing, then we don't eat it. The reason why that's such a big deal because blueberries don't grow year round. But if you
right.
can go to a store and buy blueberries year round, that should tell you that something is off.
Mm.
I'm just being real. I'm not trying to say,
Oh
I'm not
no,
trying to
no, I'm the
suggest
same way.
that should
I
tell you
don't
something's off.
want watermelon until they're in season.
To the in
I don't
season.
eat certain things unless they're in season because I know there's some unnatural stuff going on with that food, and
You
you
said
don't know
it.
what you're putting in your body.
You said it. And see, and this goes back to my background as a geneticist. See, when I was doing tissue culture at Iowa State and at Alabama A&M, it's the same science. And so when I started learning, oh, I can clone trees, it's the same way that we clone food, similarly, actually, how we clone animals and humans, then that's when, so now that I understand that science, I'm kind of going, well, if we're doing this, are we doing any harm? Are we doing, are we creating something that is unnatural? And the answer technically is yes. If we're taking from one organism and putting it over here, and when I say unnatural, meaning we're creating something that normally or naturally wouldn't happen as we so understand it in nature. But that doesn't mean that I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing it. What I'm saying is that I would just want us to be mindful of just be mindful of what's the impact and what is it that we're doing. So it's like I said, if I know blueberries are good for me, but they don't grow year round, yet I buy them year round, then ask, I'm talking to the listeners, not the Reverend Leo, then ask yourself a question. If we get those blueberries, who doesn't get them? Because
Mm,
see, that's the only way you're getting them. If you're getting the blueberries, that means somebody else is not.
mm,
Do you see what I'm saying? That means that someone is sending blueberries from somewhere else in the world where they're supposed to have it, and we're up here enjoying it. Do you see what I'm saying? But see, and that's how we're all complicit. You see, it's not, you see, this whole thing about environmental injustice isn't just about a company showing up in the community over harvesting and messing up the water for the people who are living there and leaving them sick and and them developing cancer, which you and I both have seen in
right.
communities. Environmental injustice is also the rest of us who enjoy the spoils of the land without handling it on ourselves, without growing it ourselves. Environmental injustice is seeing a small forest, meaning like one that you see in an urban environment being cut down for a subdivision to be built. And while we have people fighting for major forests, you see what I'm saying, that are like thousands and thousands of acres, you're still committing environmental injustice if you do not fight against small forests being cut down. So
Well,
basically,
look,
we are all complicit in this. And that's the reason why DEI for me is so important. Because if we
mm,
don't know how to talk to each other and work together, as you said, this is an existential issue. This planet is going to do what they got to do to get itself straight. The question is, are we going to
mm.
do what we have to do to work with it?
Well, if the planet needs to get rid of people in order to be straight, you know,
Mhm.
the Lord will come and none of us will be here. You know, but you're nicer than I am because I remember the first time I saw seedless grapes or something, and
Yes, sir.
my wife knows I don't buy them. Now I may be at an event and they have food now. I get some fruit, but I don't buy it because the first time I saw seedless fruit,
Mhm.
something came over me in my spirit.
Mm.
And the word that came to my mind was unnatural. How do you
Unnatural.
fruit reproduces itself from the seeds that are
Right.
within them? And I actually have a term that I use for that type of food. I call it Frankenstein food. Because
Frankenstein.
like you
Yeah,
said, it's cloned, it's made in a lab. It's
that's
not
right.
that, yeah. And we don't know long term what the impacts that food may have on our bodies,
You
you
said
know.
You
Mm,
said Frankenfood. That's what they called the trees when I was doing my genetic work. That's what they call the trees. They call them Franken trees. You
mm,
know, and when I was a scientist in the lab doing this work at first, I was kind of like, man, why do people have a problem with what we're doing? Because there were activists who were resisting what we were doing. I'm like, what's the problem? But when I started interacting, see, this is how I know that there's a disconnect between people. When I started interacting with those activists, that's when I started learning things. One of the things that I knew that the activists didn't know is the activists didn't actually completely know and understand what we're doing. That's the
Mm-hmm.
first thing I knew. They don't really know what we're doing. They know what they've read, they know what people have told them, but they have not actually spoken to the scientists. The next thing, though, is their concern and fear was actually valid. The reason why a lot of times it's probably hard for them to tell you what the problem is because we have not researched it enough to know what it is. And that's why I say it's valid. It's like, wait a minute, do we know what happens when genetically modified pollen is distributed across the land? You see, who
Mm-hmm.
can answer that question? A lot of people can't answer that. The same way what you said about the watermelon. Do we know what happens long term when you eat seedless fruits and what happens to your body? Now, some will say, well, no, we don't know, so let's keep going. But I'm going to tell you something. Why is it in this country now more people have allergies than we've ever had before? Why is it
Mm-hmm.
we live in a country now where people can't eat gluten? So that means our bodies cannot eat things that we would say normally we could eat. And now watch this, because this is what's gonna mess people up. Because some people think, oh, it's because our bodies are evolving. And why is it now we eat more fast food than we eat cooked food? Like you said, it's all connected.
Mm-hmm.
What we need to understand is, like I said, that's why I said the way we treat the planet is how we treat each other. If we take shortcuts with the planet, we're taking shortcuts with each other. Shortcuts with the planet lead to low biodiversity, low leads to flooding. It leads to storms being made. It leads to everything that I said, thermal heat, and communities being harmed. The same way that's what happens with the planet is the same way what happens to our health. If we're eating modified foods and we're not cooking for ourselves and we're going places, we are contributing to our lack of health. So all I'm saying is that just like you said, I'm glad that you mentioned when you said that it came before the fall. Basically, everyone, the fall means, but as we said, when sin entered into the world. So in essence, if we don't know how to be honest, be accountable for what we're doing, because if you think about it, that's what happened in the fall, right? Somebody wasn't accountable for what they were doing, and also somebody disobeyed when they were told don't do something.
Right.
So if we don't know how to respect the earth, meaning learn the earth and not do things against it, and if we don't know how to respect each other and communicate with each other, then we're just going to keep falling.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we're gonna keep doing. And all I'm trying to say is we need to listen to the planet. I know that sounds overly spiritual, but trust me, I used to think like that 10 years ago. It's not. Quiet down and just sit outside and let the wind blow. Quiet down and just turn your television off, turn your phones off, turn your
Mm-hmm.
computers off. When this podcast goes off, turn it off and sit quiet for 5 minutes and just take inventory of what you feel and what you think. And then for those of us who like me, who I love only hanging around black people, and I'm gonna continue to, I push myself to go out and be around white folks. I push
Mm-hmm.
myself to go out and be around Latinx folks. As a person who follows Jesus, I push myself to go out and interact with people who are Muslim or who are even atheists. We need each other. None of us have the answers alone to how to fix this problem of climate issues and to fix this planet. But we all, I think, have the answers together. And that's why I think we need to listen to each other.
Well, thank you for that because when there are people, I'm one of them, and we work with organizations, we work with people of different faiths.
So,
Green Faith is one that I work with, and we work with Muslims and Jews and Buddhists and Hindi and all of these. And what folks don't understand that there's certain things that we have in common. Thou shalt
mhm,
not steal, thou shalt not kill, those sorts
mhm,
of things is where we come together because when the hurricane comes, the hurricane doesn't care if you're Jewish or Muslim. And what we need to save people and bring people to safety, that's when you find these faith organizations working together. People don't know that because if you live in a certain community and most of the folks are Christian, well, then the people who may be dropping food and water off to you are Christian. But in a lot of cases, that water may have came from people of different faiths. So we have to realize that we're all in it. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, we may not have come over on the same ships, but we're all in the same boat
amen.
now. Same exact boat now when it comes, and you can just call that boat Planet Earth because we're all on it, and I'm telling you. I don't know any other ship in the sea of the universe that you could go on right now. There's no planet B and there's no plan B, is there?
No, sir. No, they try, they trying to go to outer space, as you know, and they trying to get off the planet. But I'll say this though. I think that the same way that people are trying to go to outer space, because it is happening, and
Mm-hmm,
go to another planet, it's the same way people who are on another continent said we need to go to another continent.
mm-hmm,
We need to figure out how to dominate, or we need to figure out how to be there. And what I'm continuing to realize is not the answer the answer is not to go somewhere else and to take over. The planet don't need to be conquered. The planet needs to be respected. We need to be in
mm-hmm.
concert with the planet. So my thing is, if we can't get it straight here, we already know what's going to happen when they go somewhere else. They
Oh
just
yeah.
gonna destroy that there. It's the same thing that happened in Europe. If they couldn't get it straight in Europe, okay, then what did they do? They came over to all the other continents and messed it up. So what I'm basically saying is, and that's not me trying to say a race of people is wrong. That's not where I'm going. I'm talking about human nature. If human
Mm-hmm,
nature is never satisfied and insatiable, then we're
mm-hmm,
always going to dominate, which means we're always going to deplete. And we need to get to a point, as you and I both, I think we both love the New Testament. As Paul said, I learned to be a base and I learned to be abound. Meaning, if
mm-hmm.
I know how to live without and I also know how to live with plenty, then I don't have to have a spirit of scarcity. I can have a spirit of abundance and love. And then I think that that will make it so that I connect with other people.
Right. And there is the whole notion of scarcity
Mhm.
is something that goes along with consumerism. I have to
Yes, sir.
buy. There may not be enough. So I have more clothes than I can wear, more food than I can eat, more cars than I can drive at one time. And I faced this on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s hero. And a lot of people don't know who one of his greatest heroes. He wanted to actually meet this person, but the person was assassinated like he was. And
Hmm.
that is Gandhi.
Gandhi.
King got his tactics of nonviolence from Gandhi, who used nonviolence to free India. And Gandhi said this: the earth has enough for everybody's needs, but not enough for everybody's greed.
Mm.
And so that's what we think is
Mm.
there's no scarcity. There's enough for everyone on the planet, but
Mm.
there's not enough for everybody to be greedy.
Yes,
That's
sir.
that's the problem. Yeah.
You said it. You said
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I want you to
Wow.
talk some a little bit too about, because we talked about your academic journey and that. Talk some about your music and you have a record label.
Yes, sir.
You've been on stage with these and
Some superstars.
yeah, so you made
Yeah.
me laugh when you said that you were going to Cat Williams, because boy, Cat had a rant, didn't he, about Steve
Man,
Harvey, everybody he
he
called
went in.
him.
He called out so many people. But I want people to understand. Y'all don't understand how much of a privilege it is to talk to a minister, a reverend, an ordained minister who understands pop culture and as well as understand the kingdom, of heaven, and also understands
Well,
Christianity.
thank you.
So thank you for that, Real. So I appreciate that because we're missing that in the Christian community. And well, I shouldn't say we're missing it. We need more of that because we got
Mm,
you. Um, but what I love is that Cat Williams really created a lot of things on his own, but in concert with people. That's what I did musically. So I just wanted to say that about Cat and bring it back to me.
mm,
I've been, I'm a trombonist. I've been playing the trombone longer than I've been emceeing, if you will. I've been playing the trombone since I was a kid, since I
mm.
was 11 years old, and I'm 45 now.
So let me
So
let me let me ask you this,
yes, sir.
because I played the trombone for a little while in middle school.
Okay.
Getting to that seventh position was kind of hard for me with my arm getting that slide. My little
Oh,
short arm trying to get in this seventh position.
oh, man, yeah, you're right. Seven position. That's seven all the way down and past the bell.
How you manage that at the time?
My fingers,
Oh,
as I got older, like I started at 11, I wasn't great in my opinion at the trombone, I think, until I really got to high school. Of course, that
Mm-hmm.
means I grew a little bit more. My arms got a little bit longer. And so I, and then I got a little bit of, I felt stronger, playing the horn, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh position. So I would say that I've gotten better over time, and I can get to seventh position now. So yeah, when I was younger, it was tough. So everybody, if you say you picked up a trombone and just figured it out immediately, I can't believe it, because that horn is not made for that. You got to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but being a trombonist, I appreciate playing music. Okay, so I'm fortunate that I also still work with what I like to call live musicians. Okay, I still consider people who play music. I kind of have more respect for those who play music. I said more respect. I didn't say all respect, but more than those who program music.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because I just feel like I feel like the easiest, like this is my opinion, the easiest entryway into the world of music is vocals and programming.
Yeah.
Okay, it's vocals and programming. To me, the toughest entryway into music is actually being able to play an instrument, no matter what the instrument is, whether it's a flute, whether it's an accordion, or like you and me, whether it's a trombone, but in particularly if it's the piano. Because if you can
Mm-hmm.
play the piano, you can write music for really any instrument. If
Mm-hmm.
you can play the guitar for any instrument. I know that's a long way of saying, as a musician, as an MC, I still like to make natural music.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a label that's the Easley branch. Now, the reason why it's a label, and it's fascinating that we're talking about this, because we kind of going a little bit through a transition. I guess we always in a transition. I have two producers on my label. Joe T, the producer, JS 20,000. You can find us at theeasleybranch.com, EASLEY, is how I spell it. And then I have another MC who's from South Carolina, by the way. He's
Mm-hmm.
from Hartsville. He go by B Guy by it. Okay,
Oh, he's right next door to
right next door. You remember when I came to the climate change conference, Miss
it.
Jackson, who came, that's his mom. So that's the reason why she
Okay,
came.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah.
And Ron McNair, home is just about 40 minutes from Florence.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yes, sir. That's
Yeah,
right. Of
so we produce some good stuff here. So I
course.
just want to say one more thing before you get into the label, because you
Yeah.
you you can write songs like you said, especially if you know how to do actual music instead of just beats, right? But I just want to say this for writers too, because I write some songs that done not at your level, but
Mhm.
also if you're a writer, if you know how to do poems, if you know how to do meter writing, iambic pentameter, and that sort of stuff is very similar to creating beats
Yes, sir.
for songs, right?
You said it. Yes, sir.
Because you're also a poet, so you understand that, right?
Completely. Yeah. See, to me, I think that as a lyricist in hip hop, one of the things, one of the things about lyricism that is so brilliant is if you're a clever lyricist, like you know how to write metaphors, facsimiles, like if you know how to do that, more than likely you probably would be, or you're a good poet, because
Mm-hmm.
that means that you know how to take feelings and ideas and put them in an organized fashion to create a vivid picture for whoever's listening or reading. But the problem is that for me, and I'm talking about hip hop, and with you being from New York, I know that you can appreciate this, because that's the mecca and the birthplace of hip hop. The
Oh yeah.
problem I'm having these days with lyricists in particular is that I feel like we have a lot of people who are lyricists or trying to be musicians who failed at something else.
Mm.
Okay, I didn't say that they're trying to be a musician and they're doing great in everything else. I'm feeling like some of the people that I'm starting to watch is like they're a musician, but it's like they failed at something else. So it's like, since I didn't graduate college, or I decided to drop out of college, or at least that's what, I'm not saying that that's
Oh
the
yeah.
case for a
No,
lot
I
of
get what
people,
you're
but
saying.
I'm just saying
So
it's
I
kind of
want
that's
to
the impression.
default to this. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna do this. Let me say this real quick for those who probably be challenged with this. The same way I'm talking about music is the same. If you notice, go back to the beginning of this podcast. That's actually what I said about DEI professionals. That people who are working in DEI, but they weren't successful probably in this other space. So
Mm.
now they're in DEI. So they pigeonhole themselves to just do this DEI stuff. DEI is nothing but principles that can be applied
Mm.
everywhere. back to the music. So if you're a person who says, I didn't graduate from high school, I didn't graduate college, but I just want to do this music. Unfortunately, this is just my opinion. It's my opinion, even though I know that the education system ain't perfect. I know that. But I feel like you've pigeonholed yourself to where to where this is the only thing that you can do. I'm gonna just be real with you. I think the planet needs more engineers who know how to protect water than we need more lyricists who are making music. I'm
I
just being
agree.
real with you. I think we need more farmers who know how to grow food. We need more surgeons who know how to cut cancer out, and we need more doctors who know how to, fix and cure HIV. Then we need rappers and hip hop producers. But I want to say that then we need singers, period, because I'm not mad at hip hop. I love hip hop. Hip hop did save my life. But I'm just saying that about music, period. Okay, so now, so Rashad, why are you saying
And you
that?
could do
But you
both,
got to link.
Rashad, like you're doing. You
Is
can do
that
both. You could be an engineer and also be a musician. You can do
is
both. But
and
like you
see,
said, you shouldn't pigeonhole yourself in one thing.
you said it, and so thank you actually just thank you for being like in my mind because because a little what you did what I wanted to say is that's why I do what I do. See, because I am a musician, I play music like I've played in bands, so I know how to tour around the country and play music, which also means I know how to create music. Then I'm a lyricist. Okay, so I know how to write songs, and I'm fortunate that I've opened up, like if you mentioned for people like in particular, like say Big Crit. So I know what it means to be on a big stage and
Mhm.
perform in front of hundreds to thousands of people. I know how to do that. All right. What I also know, and this is what a lot of people don't know in both of those spaces, I also know how to make money.
Mhm.
And that's what you'll see. Like when you start dealing with a lot of people who are in the hip hop realm, a lot of them don't know how to make money. They know how to kind of make music and then hope that people will pay them for the money. So what I feel we see in hip hop is we have a lot of people who are still trying to be what we had in the 90s. They're
Mhm.
still trying to come out. It's kind of like if I was in New York in the 90s, when rapping wasn't necessarily great everywhere, it was just cool for those who cared about hip hop. I would be
Mhm.
trying to be a rapper and then go to a label and perform in front of that label, and then they'll give me a deal to make music to then hopefully make money residually, or as they say, in perpetuity down the line. What we have now is a lot of people. We have an industry that is saturated with people who all just want to make music and be heard and be seen. And what's so sad is because of social media, everyone has a platform. So basically, 30,000 songs a day are being made. So
Mhm.
how do you get heard when 30,000 songs are being made?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a question. Then you have people who are trying to perform and they may go places and they may perform, but remember what I said, a lot of times people know how to make music, but they don't know how to make money. So the
Mhm.
reason why I made my label is because my label, which is an LLC, is a cushion for me to be able to go to other entities that care about music making and to say, I make music, I have a catalog. Here is my catalog. Having a label means I have a website. You can find my music. Meaning, if you can find my music on a website, you can find my music on another platform. What we're trying to do is we're trying to be as professional as we can and be as patient as we can so that when we make money or so that when we blow up, we will continue to make money and people not
Mhm.
take stuff from us. You mentioned if you're a poet, the reason why we also have that label is for publishing. See, if you don't own your own publishing, let's say Reverend Woodbury, he writes a song and then he puts the song out on a local radio station there
Mhm.
in Florence, South Carolina. Okay,
Mhm.
people in Florence like the song, but you got more people in Columbia, South Carolina. So
Mhm.
then let's say a DJ hears the song in Columbia and they say, let's just play the song on a radio station here. When they
Mhm.
play it on a radio station there, then let's say that radio station in Columbia is syndicated in New York City. Now let's say somebody in New York hears it. Ooh, and then they go, where'd you get that song? Well, see, if they don't have an answer, but they ain't worried about having an answer, they just know that they heard the song and then you get it. Somebody can turn around and remake that song. And by the
Mhm.
time that person becomes a millionaire, they don't forgot. They don't even know that Reverend Woodbury wrote that song.
Oh yeah.
They
And
don't
let,
even
let
know
me
where they
say,
first heard it. Yes, sir.
yeah, let me say this quick too, because
Please.
we're getting to the end. I'm sorry, but like the other thing too is people think I'll just put out a CD CD or video and somebody's gonna see it and I'll get famous. No, I used to live in Queens in New York, run
Mhm.
DMC. That crew came out of Hollis. I used to ride
Yes,
on the
please.
3A bus with them. We used to ride
Wow.
on the F train together. We used to get
Wow.
off at 23rd Street and 6th Avenue. I worked in the same building that they went in for the recording studio. I lived next to when 50 Cent was in 40 projects and stuff, and I was on Baisley and Merrick Boulevard. Somebody didn't just discover them. They were selling their CDs. They were selling them. And what happened was when somebody did find out about them, they were like, oh, wait a minute, you've been going all over the place. You sold 5,000, 10,000 of these?
Mm.
Well, shoot, we're a recording company. If you can sell 5,000 on your own, we probably can sell 1,000,000. You know what I mean? And
That's it.
and I'm getting a signal. We really getting to the end. But
Okay.
say again quickly about your label and
Sure.
how important it is, and to do that really quickly. We're down to a couple of minutes. I told you
Yes,
this was gonna go faster.
you did, yes, yeah. Well, like I said, the name of the label is the Easley Branch, and
Mm-hmm,
we make music that we think aligns with our values. So, you know how I'm a forester. I make music about the environment. My
mm-hmm,
guy B, God Body, if you have to listen to his music. Unfortunately, B came had a run in with the criminal justice system. So a
mm-hmm,
lot of his music has to do with how he beat the criminal justice system.
mm-hmm,
So we make our music about what we've done. Just like I do diversity work, I only do diversity work in a way that I've done it. So our music is clean. Our music is positive. We're all college educated people. Not saying you got to be college educated to be down with us because you don't. But on the Easley branch, we are all college educated, and we're now working with other people who are educated. Like I said, not just educated. We want our music. Like you remember when I say hip hop saved my life. The reason hip hop saved my life is because it helped me get on a path to success
mm-hmm.
by getting my life together. That's what
And
our
how to
music is about.
how to manage that, and how to manage that money. Know
How to
how
make
to
exactly.
finance pieces. We have New Alpha. And you helped us with it this last year, 2023. And
So
Richard Gant, who the actor who was on Norbert and played Ice Cube's dad on NCIS. So working
mhm.
with you and some other folks, New Alpha now has an arts and cultural program, and we're hoping that if we identify some good people, we'll be able to steer them your way and towards your label. But we're running out of time. We've run out of time. I'm sorry. And so why don't you tell Rashad, Dr. Easley, why don't you tell folks how they can reach you, tell them about your label once again, and we gotta have you back on again.
Yes, sir. You can find the label Easley Branch, excuse me, theeasleybranch.com. If you want to follow me, I go by Rashad Ease in the music world, and you can find me on Instagram at Easley Branch Music, and you will find me and the other people on the label. If you want to support the diversity work that we do, you can find us at Mind Heart, Mind MIND, Mind Heart, HEART, forward diversity.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn there, and you can find me on Instagram under Dr. Period Thomas Rashad Easley, and you can find me on Facebook or Meta, under Rashad Ease, under Dr. Thomas Rashad Easley. So I'm there, and from there, if go find me there. Our music is on every platform, and like I said, you can support us on our website, and that way, if you find or you hear something that you like, and you want to work with us on those platforms, you can find out how to get in touch with us.
Great. Thank you so much, Brother Rashad. And if you want to reach out to me, you can reach out by going to info@newalphacdc.com. Always remember to visit our website, www.newalphacdc.com, or you can call me at the church that I'm still blessed to be the pastor of, Kingdom Living Temple, 705 South Irby Street in the city of Florence, South Carolina, 843-799-0740. And so thank you, Brother Rashad. And remember, brothers and sisters, family and friends, that if you need to know the things you want to know and go the places you want to go, it's the Leo and Larry Show.